nation's consumer supply chain faces severe disruptions if dock workers at ports along the east and Gulf coasts go on strike, and the deadline is quickly approaching. Investigator Tim McNicholas is in Jersey City with the details and the possible fallout.
Work at some of the busiest ports in North America could soon come to a halt.
When my men hit the streets, from Maine to Texas, every single port will lock down.
The union, which represents more than 40,000 longshoremen at 36 ports, including major hubs like Charleston, Houston, and Miami, is demanding wage increases as well as protection from job-killing automation.
I've been fighting automation for years. They destroyed L.A.
Workers are threatening to strike if a new labor agreement with shipping companies represented by the United States Maritime Alliance is not reached by October 1st.
All activity in the Port of New York and New Jersey with regards to containerized cargo and automobile cargo will cease.
Each year, more than $200 billion worth of goods, including car parts, construction materials, and produce pass through the Port of New York and New Jersey alone. That trade supports more than 500,000 local jobs.
And a 2-week strike could, cause these disruptions to feed into early 2025.
Ryan Sweet with Oxford Economics says if a deal isn't reached in time, a stoppage could disrupt more than half of U.S. shipping traffic.
This is going to be very disruptive to the U.S. economy.
In a statement to CBS News, the U.S. Maritime Alliance says it has not been able to schedule new bargaining sessions with the union, adding the only way to resolve this is to resume negotiations. Tim McNicholas, CBS News.
All right, over to our next report. Cisco has announced its second round of layoffs this year, affecting approximately 5,600 employees. And this represents a significant cut of 7% of the company's workforce. The tech giant is joining a growing number of companies forced to reduce their headcount due to economic pressures and declining demand. In 2024 alone, over 136,000 employees across 422 tech companies were laid off, with Cisco being one of the largest employers affected.
I believe with all my heart and everything that I know that we've already begun the transition to hyperinflation. We're going to see more borrowing, more money printing, more inflation, because they have not killed that beast that they created and continue to create. And I think it'll become very obvious 2025. I believe that they're going to try and hold it steady through the elections, so not have a big crisis before then. But after that, I think all the gloves are pretty much off. In my opinion, what they have in mind for us takes us back to feudal times. I think the banking sector is extraordinarily sick. Every single bank is underwater. And even a quarter of a point, that's not going to do really anything to these valuations. And if you go to the purchasing power of the consumer dollar, the Federal Reserve tells you themselves, if you look on that left-hand index, what's down at the bottom? A big fat zero. And we're not very far from that. It's critical that there is a zero on that index, so they well know that the currency is going to zero. And what happens when we get there?
Hyperinflation is usually a rate of at least 50% per month by the technical definition. Do you literally mean hyperinflation as that technical definition?
I think it'll be even worse than that.
A violent Venezuelan gang called Tren de Aragua, or TDA, has set up shop in New York City, using migrant shelters as a base for their operations. The New York Police Department says that the gang is responsible for thefts at high-end stores and ride-by robberies and scooters. They're also selling something called 2C, or pink cocaine, which is a drug that's becoming more and more prevalent. TDA has also been linked to the shooting of 2 NYPD police officers. And New York isn't the only city dealing with TDA. From Chicago to Denver to New York City, there have been dozens of arrests that have been linked to the group. A Department of Homeland Security official told the New York Times that federal officials were, quote, working on more than 100 investigations linked to the gang at one point this year. And, quote, officers nationwide have made more than 50 arrests related to the gang.
It's happening. You see what's happening with towns throughout the United States. You look at Springfield, Ohio, Aurora in Colorado. They are taking over the towns. They're taking over buildings. They're going in violently. These are the people that Xi and Biden led into our country.
I want to touch on a topic that hasn't come up yet today, and that's our preparedness to ensure the continuity of this institution in the face of the unthinkable happening if there is a mass casualty event, and the role that you all play in that. We have sadly seen a dramatic increase in the amount of threats against members of Congress. This committee is looking into whether states are appropriately positioned to act and to ensure the continuity of government and operations in the event of something horrific happening. I know you all have enough to worry about, but this is a topic that the Select Committee on the Modernization of Congress looked at, and I think it is one that demands more attention, and thankfully, and I thank the chair for this, and Chairwoman Bice, a bipartisan group of us sent a letter to the Government Accountability Office and to all of you and to your fellow secretaries of state asking you to participate in a report that the Government Accountability Office is doing just to see whether we're prepared. It's designed to inform Congress about your ability to comply with existing federal requirements for filling mass vacancies in states' representation following a mass casualty event. Current law is that a special election needs to be held within 49 days in the event of a mass casualty if there's more than 100 vacancies in the House. So we sent you a letter just asking you to work with the Government Accountability Office and answer their questions. Can I just ask quickly, yes or no? Will you all work with the GAO and just respond to their questions? Can I just have an affirmative yes from everybody? Yes? Sure. Okay,
yes.
Thank you for that. We will only be able to solve problems insofar as we understand the problem. So. And for you, Secretary Toulouse Oliver, given your state's leadership of the National Association of State Election Directors and the National Association of Secretaries of State, both of whom we've spoken to about this before, could you just speak about the time and resources needed to effectively hold a special election from your perspective? And do you think the current law of 49 days is doable?
Thank you very much, Representative, for asking that question. So we actually recently modified our special election law in New Mexico. We have a 100-day time frame that's codified between when the vacancy occurs and when the election has to happen. And that was really compacting the time frame. We felt as short as we could possibly do it, with also having a well-prepared, accurate election that the voters are ready for, as well as election administrators. 49 days would be really pushing it. I mean, by federal law, we have to mail out ballots 45 days before an election, right? So that gives you 4 days between a vacancy being created, candidacies being nominated and declared, right? I mean, I just don't think that's realistic. I obviously understand the urgency of filling those seats, obviously, but it would be a huge challenge.
And the steps in the process, I mean, military voters, all of those sorts of things need to be accounted for as well, right?
Absolutely. Again, 49 days, okay, and then on day 4 of that period, you're already mailing out ballots to your uniformed military voters and overseas voters. I think that's just incredibly unrealistic.
So one of the things we're trying to figure out is, I mean, I hear 49 days and I think, man, that's a long time for Congress to be missing 100 members or more, right? Or in a mass casualty event, I mean, every time I go to the State of the Union, I think, like, but for the grace of God, go we. So 49 days is a long time, and what I hear you saying is, like, that would be really hard to achieve.
Again, I think as election administrators, I think we can all say we're very used to making things work. We will make things work, whatever we have to do. You are not going to have as accurate an election, and it's going to be really hard for those election administrators to make that kind of time frame work in a way that ensures, that those overseas voters are getting their ballots, not to mention being ready for things like early voting and absentee voting in all the states. Very challenging time frame, Representative.
I thank you for your response, and thank you for each of you for being willing to work with the GAO. We're trying to figure out whether there's a better way to do this. So thank you. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Congressman Loudermilk is recognized for 5 minutes.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank all of you for being here. I appreciate the work that you guys do. Look, Whether we like it or not, election
commitments embodied in the pact and its annexes reflect the collective will of member states and must guide our Our future is in our hands. We have the power to make important choices for the future. We stand at crossroads of global transformation, facing unprecedented challenges that demand urgent collective action. From conflict and climate change to the digital divide, from inequalities to threats against human rights, together we all face profound challenges.
I called for this summit because 21st century challenges require 21st century solutions, frameworks that are networked and inclusive, and that draw on the expertise of all of humanity. I called for this summit because our world is heading off the rails, and we need tough decisions to get back on track. Listen to young people and include them in decision-making.
Hi, everyone. This is Dr. Sherry Tenpenny, and I want to do a quick update about a document that got passed by the United Nations this weekend called the Pact of the Future document. It's two parts, one on science and technology and one about the youth and future generations. It is quite egregious, and it was done by a procedure called the silence procedure, which makes it a pact. And if no one objected, it is automatically adopted and put into the record as being completely adopted. This is the World Health Organization's runaround, or end around. Since they were not able to get the World Health Organization treaty passed, they decided to take it to the General Assembly. And it is even more egregious than what the World Health Organization was wanting to get passed. Let me just read you something really quickly about what is inside of this pact that is now being accepted by 193 nations around the world and equally open-armed accepted by our current administration. Everyone, it says that this is the power structure fully digital and maximized for the control of the masses. Everyone will be expected to have a biometric digital ID that marks them not just as citizens of an individual country, but as a global citizen. So anytime you hear global citizen or anytime you hear sustainability, think that this is an egregious thing that's happening at the level of the World Health Organization and the United Nations. Anyone that has a dissonant opinion will be labeled as misinformation, disinformation, or malinformation and memory hold. Perpetrators for unapproved information will be fact-checked and punished by the system, which will be operated and enforced by artificial intelligence. Punishments will include being locked out of one's bank account, being unable to make certain purchases, unable to get on an airplane, on a subway, drive on public roads. This is the future, according to the world's self-appointed overlords at the United Nations. These are unelected bureaucrats that are making decisions about our country, our sovereignty around the world. Nothing could be more important at this point in time than to get prepared. Have water, food, digital access, flashlights, a way to communicate with family and friends. Now is really the time to get involved and get prepared because this is what's coming.